1.
Courtrooms in my mind because he moved from the downstairs.
Right.
I was here the last proceeding.
Is 3 gonna, are you covered for 3 as well?
Channel Fox is out, Channel 8 is outside. They'll be here. Sometimes we share with 3.
Yeah.
I don't know our arrangement today.
Okay. We'd like to move
You-
this out of the way.
Sure.
Start filling this way.
Sure. Want us in the back row?
Yeah.
That sounds good.
We're gonna, well, yeah, just move them out of the way, but we're gonna move them back in just a
There's
second.
gonna be-
They're gonna be there.
Oh, okay.
Where is there going to be a place where the victims make their statements?
Yeah, and we'll talk
Why
about that.
can't I think my brain is on the masters?
Hey,
Impact statements. God.
Everybody's gonna be sitting back here, but
And they'll come to where?
they're not gonna go stand.
Oh, they're going to stand in their own place?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You work, do you have a recorder with you too?
No,
Oh,
just
nobody
me.
else?
No,
Okay,
I-
why don't, yeah, is this a good spot right here?
Yeah, here's, like, we have a whole thing we do, like, whoever gets here first, we got the cherry spot. So I don't know, given that sound, can we put a microphone on that woodwork over there just to be able to hear people?
Yeah.
On the wall, the pony wall?
Let's do that. You got it. We'll set
Yeah,
it
we'll set it over there.
Just make sure
I'll wait to turn it on, so if I can,
Yeah, I was gonna ask if we could, what time are you planning on starting the stream?
like, I'll come up, is it proceeding at 11, I'll come up at 10 of.
Okay, that's.
And then, you know, like I go to courts all the time, so whatever, there won't be any sidebars or anything, but we're you good at turning up and down, or any other requests if there's victim, or the family that don't want to
I
be,
did, and that's why I don't know you. I'm gonna let you know.
on the victim side.
Yeah, I don't know what the thoughts
You know,
are.
the parents, all this stuff is so sad, we're not like zeroing into, I mean, sometimes we'll get the emotion, but it's more about him than the victims and.
Oh, nothing.
Yeah, so if we do that, I'm gonna have to turn it on, but can you show me where you'd like it? Or what we can figure out? I appreciate you guys being so thorough. Because believe me, we feel out of place, we like to do. Like you're saying that literally will speak.
They're gonna.
Victims be more on this side?
Yeah, this side.
Okay, then we would set like right up against that.
Yeah.
That would just be helpful, because that's really, and I'll just, from our standpoint, that's the stuff that we,
Are you gonna put one on the bench?
I'll put one if, yeah, and then we could pick up.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be really good. I'm gonna change some batteries.
Okay.
And more importantly, use the restroom.
Got it.
It's the other reason I came in early. Hey, thank you guys for the help.
Not a problem.
And Judge does have a problem with it being kind of, sort of, down here.
What, does it work down there?
It can, sometimes we can pick up other stuff too, so.
Yeah, you want to put it down there, that's fine. Just make sure you don't knock that camera that's sitting there.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay.
Good morning, thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, but yeah, you want to stand there, that's fine. Oh, you want to sit, right? I can sit down. And we're gonna have to we'll put it in Kathy's office when we come in, just grab it out of her office, okay? You know what I mean? Oh, I got you. We'll grab it for you. should come right up as soon as you bring it up. It's already on, so. We're gonna figure it out. Figure it out. Try to find it. Is that okay, Mr. No, that's in the corner? Yeah. Go grab one.
We're supposed to, we got a pointer too. Do you want us to send a pointer?
No, he has one. It's like a pink arrow.
Do you want me to find him? Yeah.
Hi, how are you? Good.
I'm Stacy from Stanley.
Okay, one second. Okay. Do you need help with something? You sure?
No, we have plenty of guys here to help.
You guys should go there.
No, I'm from Channel 8.
Hey, oh, okay. You got camera coming?
Yes.
Okay. Come on, let's come over this way.
Okay. Well,
You're with your
well, here's the issue. I have to do it in my shop. So if it's still going on, I need to be in a place where I can screw up the door without interfering with whatever's happening.
That's gonna be tough, because this is all gonna be taken back here.
Okay.
Is that available or not? That goes in the chamber.
Let me ask.
Yeah, if I can scoot out that, just so I'm not interfering with
Sure.
everybody.
Let me go ask.
Can I have, where that pointer, please? The,
Sorry about the computer down here.
okay.
Okay.
He's gonna be in the hallway, he's checking on the other groups.
Okay.
I was too.
And then I'm at the furthest point where
I asked her.
Well,
I know. I thought you guys were just placeholding another.
So is that what they're saying? So-
Yeah, everybody has to
Maybe
be
I'll
this,
take my coat off.
that's the farthest gate.
Farthest to the wall or closest?
He'll sit here, so I was just trying to get the least profile, but we can, yeah, but we have to be in the back, and that's the farthest toward that area.
So
Everything this way.
And nobody can be in the front row?
Nah, he said, I don't know why.
Reese is coming, so whatever you're
But he'll be in the middle. The-
Okay.
Or on the, I mean, he might be here.
And you don't want anybody in the front?
Probably not.
No farther like this.
Let's see. Yeah, is that okay for you?
Yeah.
Good.
I know last time we did it, it's like, I'm not as concerned about.
Oh, you need seats for more people over
I'm
here,
not
is that what's going
concerned.
on?
Yeah, we're gonna have,
Just be blocked out unless they let me in.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anybody who speaks is just gonna sit back and speak?
Or, that's my knowledge, yeah, we're not, we should all be back there. Yeah, raising seats should go back there, so, yeah.
Yes.
I don't even know if they want to be filmed, video, to tell you the truth. So, we can find that.
Do you know who's, yeah, do you know who's talking about how many people were?
Yeah, from over about this.
Yeah, I mean, here's the one, I don't care about people.
Sorry. Oh, it's,
I mean,
oh, it's,
you know, it's supposed to be-
those are the good old ones. Yeah.
That's why I figured I needed this.
Right.
where this one line is.
Good
I
time.
mean, you got one for the judge there, just in there. I mean, I don't know for the judge. I always put my best on the, yeah, and that's, he'll also project, and I think they got microphones. It's a shame they don't bring them up to the podium. And, in the big picture, it doesn't. They're
Up to
bigger.
where?
I mean, it's, you know, they're using a podium for
Yeah.
the entire stuff. But I'm just saying, in the big picture, it's more about these people. What they're going through and stuff. Yeah, I was thinking I'd be able to do that. I'd like to get in as these profiles.
Yeah.
It don't matter. We just, you go, I didn't know if we were sharing this with you today or not.
Oh.
You guys still do that?
Well, so on occasion,
Wish they'd get rid of it.
yeah, it's a little,
Because in reality, you guys use.
because then I have to drink
everything.
coffee nice too. No, it's funny. I mean, I guess it's just we can't be two places
I think they do it
sometimes.
on weekends more.
Oh, do they? I know
so.
Julia has, our Dayside people have
Oh, maybe in the mornings.
relied on it. Yeah. Well, it's just as annoying, a lot of these municipalities where you have to go pick up a DVD, they haven't like found a way to send us a file. It gets a little, like, really, I got drive doesn't give you a file to get a DVD. And we always have trouble dubbing the DVDs in.
Yeah, there's always sometimes if there's a.
Right?
Yeah, there's usually some issue.
Right. Well said. I don't know what we, I bet it's police officers that are going to,
Well, they're all.
there's so many.
No, he said it's gonna be
Who's going to be here?
family, there's gonna be more. He just said it's gonna be like 4 or 5 cops, like 5 victims' family members and 5 some drivers.
No, probably.
So he said it's gonna go to like, this is gonna be
One?
like to 1, and then you have, that's like 15.
Oh, geez, let me go get a power strip.
Yeah, I'm gonna be.
I'm going to go back out to, yeah, there's power right below it. You got a strip?
Yeah, there's some.
Hey, Jim, do you have a power strip?
I think that's.
Because there's an outlet right below.
I think there's another one.
Do you have a strip, a power strip we can share? Or
It's
was
not a
there,
strip, it's one of the three.
was there an outlet right below you?
Yeah, there's another
one right,
one.
okay.
But we're gonna have more space on that end for cameras too.
Oh, you will?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we might kind of force you around that way. so
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So, well, your camera's not here yet, so you're,
My, no, because we have a day side crew coming.
okay.
And so they're arriving.
He said it should be in 5.
Okay.
Be 5 now.
How are you,
Right.
how are you dealing with like overflow for police officers?
It's gonna be a drop. Seven, six, three. They're gonna fit that. Yeah. Yeah. Come on down this way if you would. You spot the view. Come here.
On
You can work back there in that corner?
Okay. Yeah, wherever you need us.
Okay.
Hey, Chris,
Yeah,
so you know, anybody who talks is gonna be just standing up here and talking,
kind of in the middle.
wherever they
Yeah.
want.
Oh, really? Okay.
Family and police, everybody's sitting here, so just so you know.
Okay.
Kevin already put his mic over here, it's, you know,
On that. Okay. All right. I can do that.
but just so you know, angle-wise.
Okay. Yeah. Let me put a fresh battery in it just to make sure.
Yeah, I think it's less.
So you got 8. 3. Hey, I'm surprised you're not getting 8 either. No, I haven't seen
5 will get here about 11:30.
I can't believe you getting it. We're actually fine to go walk. Yeah, that's sure. Okay.
Let me leave it on, Chris, or cut it off? You can leave it on. There's fresh batteries in it.
You're gonna need me in the next seat.
Yeah, so I'll put my bag, don't go past like right here. Just go in here, and then there's 3 seats under that TV that,
And then a couple, they're probably have to stand. I really don't know.
I think we have to stop, we had one.
Okay. And it's, and even more, if most people. Yeah, we got 3 over there.
And then there's 3 seats up there
That's where people want to talk.
who are not going to ski.
We'll say one of those in there.
Perfect. No problem.
Down here.
That screwed you up. This is right. Oh, you just okay? There's no advantage except that. This level, I will. Thank you. Is this yours? Both of them. Yeah. Nebraska stuff. You see that? Yeah. I don't know.
This is all I have.
Okay, you got one more spot.
I got one up here.
I'll put all the facts if you want all that. Yeah. He said on the lower part. But, well, it's probably. Do they have it right in
Did they say lower part?
Yeah. That's good. That's nice.
He said the lower part should be okay.
It's like 3 in the morning. Ready to go hard.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could ask you to turn off your cell phones at this time, please. Thank you.
Be seated, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. We are here in case 18 CR 671, State of Ohio versus Brian A. Anthony. We're here today for purposes of a sentencing hearing. Defendant is present, represented by attorneys Hector Martinez and Richard Perez. Back on March 1st of 2019, the defendant pled guilty to 4 separate counts. Count 1, aggravated vehicular homicide, a felony of the 2nd degree. Count 2, operating a vehicle under the influence of alcohol, a drug of abuse, or a combination of them, a misdemeanor of the 1st degree. Count 3, duties upon approaching stationary public safety vehicle, displaying emergency light, a minor misdemeanor. And count 4, stopping after accident, a felony of the 3rd degree. After those pleas, his case was referred for victim impact statements, pre-sentence investigation and report, and a drug and alcohol evaluation, as well as a psychological evaluation. Those have all been completed, and both parties are ready to proceed.
All right, at the outset, we spoke before we came out regarding the representative of the victim, and pursuant to the statute of 2930.02, it's my understanding that Lisa Mazzani will speak. Is that correct?
Yes,
And also
Mazzani as well, Your Honor.
Mike Mazzani and Chief Knight of the Mentor Police Department.
That is correct. So Mr. Mazzani as well as Lisa Mazzani.
All right, those will be designated. I'm going to designate those the representatives of the victim. All right. Mr. Perez?
Your Honor, we're indicated by the prosecution for sentencing. We're prepared to go forward.
Go ahead.
I'd like to have, we intend to call 2 people to speak on Brian's behalf. I'd like to say a few things on his behalf, and Brian would like to address the court. So we'd like to start off by having some of his family members speak.
All right, whoever is going to speak, just state your name for the record and tell me whatever it is you want me to know.
Your Honor, I am Ann Albrecht. I am Brian Anthony's mom. I currently serve as a elementary school principal. And I want to thank you for allowing me to speak today. I want to first express my deepest sympathy to the Mazzani family, all of the first responders in this room and in our community, and to all who have been impacted by the significant loss of Officer Mazzani as friend, colleague, cannot begin to imagine how deep your pain and loss is. And I have been praying every day since that horrific accident for each of you, and I promise I will continue to do so. Your Honor, I respectfully ask for the opportunity to share with you a little bit of also knows and how much he Brian was raised in a very large family filled with generations of police, fire, and military professionals. The night of the accident, he went out with friends to celebrate one of his buddies getting into the police academy. We have received over 400 cards and letters since this accident took place. Many are from people we don't even know, but all are from people who are affected by Brian in some positive way. Brian impacted my life most profoundly when he came to us at the age of 19 and asked for help. He had just finished his freshman year in college, and he came to us and he humbly admitted he had a drinking problem. He knew he needed to make significant changes in his life so that he could be a person for others. He, on his own, made that decision to cut all ties with friends, as he knew he was wired in a way that he could not be around the common college scene of drinking and partying. He left the sport he loved, and he made the choice to seek support. The following 5 years changed his life. He put himself in treatment, he faith-kept the steps in AA, and he became a support to many others with addiction. He was a leader, a volunteer, and he gave witness to his struggles and his deep, deep desire to be sober. He on his own took control of his life and turned things around. Brian always owned his mistakes. He always worked to make amends. He always cared and worried about the impact his life had on others. Brian humbly shared his challenges with his younger sisters, as he's been an incredible role model in faith, grit, and courage. As you know, my husband Michael was the paramedic who tried to save Officer Mercedes Lake that night. I believe he too was Brian's first responder. Through 22 years of being a firefighter's wife, so many times his pager would go off during a birthday or a significant event. I would respond, "Do you have to go?" And every time, answer, if it was for someone in our family who would want me to be there. On that tragic night, God chose Mike to respond to his family and me. His family, fellow officers, and his son. And while I prayed for answers on why someone had to lose their life that night, I know God's plan is always good in the end. Brian had no malice in his heart. Brian would never choose to bring harm to another human being. Brian will forever be sorry for the choices he made that night and the devastating impact it will have on others that will last a lifetime. Brian stood in this courtroom and he admitted his guilt before God and his God. He is a good, loving man. This accident does not define him as a person. I know he will take his consequences respectfully, and he will always never stop working to make amends in any way that he can. My only wish for my children is for each of them to grow up to be a loving person of service to others. Brian is that person, and I'm confident he will also never stop working at recovery, and he will seek to help as many people as he can. My prayers will continue for all impacted by this tragedy. May you all experience God's presence as you search for his peace and healing. And may I humbly ask you to one day consider forgiving my son and allow him the chance to use his gifts and to respond to his baptismal call as he leads others with his heart to make restitution for his sins. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lord.
Good morning, Judge.
Morning.
My name is Michael Ulrich. I am Brian Anthony's stepfather. I wanted to begin by sharing my deepest condolences to the Zaney family. I will forever carry the memory of Officer Mazzani in my prayers and my heart. I pray you will one day forgive. To my fellow first responders, I am deeply sorry for our loss. As you know, I was the acting lieutenant and the paramedic on the call who tried to save Officer Mazzani's life that night. I have served the city of Mentor for over 25 years and dedicated my life to helping those in need. On June 4th, God called me to the most important call of my career. I'm deeply sorry that I had to deliver the news of the passing of a fellow officer. He made the greatest sacrifice that we are all called to make, to offer our life in latitude. I ask you for another person's life now, the life of my stepson, Brian. Brian is a good man. Brian grew up in our family of first responders. He spent many days hanging around the firehouse, hearing stories of our work, and even wanting to be a firefighter someday himself. Brian's story is one that many people share today. The story of a young man who battles addiction. He has already shown at a young age he wants to overcome his disease, and he had been going through treatment for the last 5 years. I humbly ask you to continue to work to help people who are in the same situation by providing community support, compassion, tools, and professional help to try to statistics around. Brian will be that person we'll use in this tragedy to help other young people. He has the people skills, the compassion, heart, and the experience to share and support and help others turn their life. On behalf of my entire family, I thank the entire community of first responders for the sacrifices you make as you continue to serve our people. I am proud to be part of this good, and I humbly ask for your support as my family moves to make restitution alongside our son, Brian. He is a man that deserves a second chance, and one day I'm confident that he will continue to have a positive impact on this community in which he lives.
Thank you, Mr.
Morning, Your Honor.
Morning.
My name is Jim Fox. I'm a police officer, retired. I'm here today on behalf of my brothers and sisters. I'm Brian's uncle, Annie's my little sister. Since the day this happened, the folks on the police department and throughout the county that know me. They're giving me nothing but hugs and saying, Jim, as there are no answers, they've been kind. I believe it. Because this is so tragic. With all the hugs we've all had, none of us to this day have hugged Brian. And Brian, if you could just look at me for 1 second. I haven't so much as contacted my nephew in the court appearances. Probably because I was his damn hero. When he was growing up, I was up that did everything. And in every party I had my rear. And I'm ashamed. He asked me to be his first mentor. When he made his confirmation, I was his sponsor. He's a teenager that asked me, why me? There's plenty of uncles and plenty of people. Because I think I was the cop he was so proud of. And I know what we do is wrong. And I think my family just want to give my condolences to his family, all the officers, and especially that night, those on scene with Mike. I apologize for my emotion today, but I love y'all. You have no idea what you've done. I know you haven't yet. I too wish for forgiveness for me, my family, Brian, because I do believe this. We're here but for a short time, and we all need forgiveness, and we all need to stand together. All officers that are affected by these deaths, I've been at plenty of officers' funerals, but I couldn't go to this one because of my emotion. But I am truly sorry. And Brian, I want a second chance. If I can be your sponsor again one day, I will be there. And I'll do it better this time. I will never leave home again. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Chief.
Judge, my name is Anthony. I wrote this to you on behalf of Brian Anthony. I've been married to Brian's dad for 22 years. I'm also a firefighter. And this is retired. Brian was almost 3 years old when we married. We blended our family with 2 children each. And 4 years later, we're blessed with one of our own, making 5. Despite growing up in a big family and living between 2 homes, all of our children grew up to love one another and to respect their step-parents. It was not easy, but we worked hard to teach them about love and forgiveness and compassion and commitment. Brian has been gifted with many talents. He excelled in sports and he loved to coach younger children to play hockey. He is heart is so heavy for the loss of the life of Mr. Mazzani. It is so tragic, and the pain is so far-reaching. None of us will ever be the same. A prayer for Brian is that he would allow God to make his life meaningful, no matter where he lays his head. I also pray that everyone who's been affected by this, officer at the scene, the first responders, Mr. Mazzani's fellow officers, and his family, that they could find it in their hearts to forgive Brian, so that they will not be imprisoned by anger and bitterness.
Thank you, Ms. Anthony.
Your Honor, my name is Dennis Anthony. I'm Brian's father. It's with a heavy heart that I stand before all of you. The tragic course of events that took place 10 months ago has changed the lives of all of us. The actions of my one and only son, my love with all my heart, have resulted in the loss of life. And this I will struggle with for the rest of my life. Last June, as my son and I watched the Indians game together, remember we talked about life issues. This happened quite frequently. We often talked about wanting to do or be in life. Brian grew up in a public service environment. In his younger years, he spent a great deal of time hanging out at firehouses. Whether it was me in South Euclid or with his stepdad, Mike and me, it was in these helping, caring environments that I believe Brian developed a great deal of respect and admiration for those in uniform. He grew up wanting two things in life: to become a professional hockey player and then a career firefighter. Both required a great deal of commitment and determination. My son is one of the most committed and determined young men I have ever known. He worked full-time and successfully attended college full-time. Gifted athlete with tremendous leadership abilities. Whether he was playing baseball, lacrosse, basketball, or football, he always managed to rise in the leadership ranks, usually resulting in his teammates voting him team captain. Today, there are no winners or losers, only sadness, heartache, and pain. My prayer is for the Mazzani family, as well as our family, for healing and hope for us.
Thank you.
Just want to apologize to Officer Zani's family, to all the police officers that matter to my family. This is affected. I know that there's nothing I can do to right this tragedy that was caused by my decision to drive impaired. The only thing that I can do is accept full responsibility for my actions. As you are aware, I entered plea guilty to all charges in order to accept complete responsibility. Also, I did not want to put the Mazzani family and the Mentor Police Department through any more grief. As you know, many members of my family are in law enforcement and firefighters, and I've always been taught to admit my wrongs and punishment. I made a horrible series of decisions that evening. My use of alcohol and drugs have ruined the lives of others, as well as mine. I changed my behavior. I promised to do so during my period of incarceration and afterward. The day that goes by that I don't pray for the Mazzani family, Mr. Mazzani's son, his fellow officers, and his friends. I realize that my horrible decisions that evening have caused everlasting heartache to the Mazzani family, his friends, and my own family. Once again, please know how truly sorry and devastated I am that I am the one who caused this tragedy.
On Brian's behalf, first of all, I'd like to extend Hector and Brian and my sympathy to the family. Officer Mazzani was a wonderful officer. We lived personally in cases with him. I know that his death has affected people in the community, affected the Mentor Police Department, be the fire department. And they have my signature. Brian, you heard a little bit from Brian's family. But I think you received approximately 58 letters from other members of the community. Some of those were the 5 letters from his family. That also tied. Brian grew up in Lake County, went to Lake Catholic High School. A lot of the letters were from people who knew him as he grew up. He then went away to Kent State University. I think his mother outlined some of the issues he had at Kent. He realized that he had a problem with alcohol and substance abuse, so he dropped out of Kent, even though he was playing hockey there and mentored a number of people. He came back to work on his sobriety. He did this on his own, not as a result of any court activity. He then engaged in treatment at various locations, been a member of AA, sponsored people, has sponsored, just worked very diligently on recovery. Some of the letters that you received talk a little bit about Brian. They use terms like humility. I jotted some of these terms down. Humility, caring, giving of himself, kindness to others, a mentor. A number of people indicated he was a mentor to them. Positive letters that we received on behalf of Brian. On June 23rd, 2018, Brian went out to celebrate. Went to acquire this cocaine, ingested it, turns out it was fentanyl, and it had a tremendously depressive effect on him. caused him to be extremely impaired. He drove from there to heading towards the Manor Yacht Club where he was going to meet some friends. On the way, unfortunately and tragically, he went off the road and hit Officer Mazzani, who was standing on the side of the road next to a cruiser that had stopped another vehicle. His cruiser was behind that cruiser. They both had their overhead light bars on. There were red and blue lights. Brian did not see Officer Mazzani. Brian hit something. He had no idea what he hit. He did continue to go. He went a few hundred feet past this. He stopped, looked in his rearview mirror, turned around, saw the light, but did not see anybody coming after him. Didn't know exactly what happened in an addicted, impaired state, and drove to this yacht club to meet with his friends. While there, realized that there was some damage to his vehicle, had no idea he had hit a person. Spent the night there, went to sleep, spent the night there. That morning, he contacts his father and his stepfather, and he learns that there are a number of police officers surrounding the location he's at, and he's told to go outside with his hands up, which he did. That's when he learned that he had hit a police officer. A little later, he learned that the police officer was a Menor police officer, Officer Mazzani. He has been extremely remorseful ever since. The accident itself was something he never intended to occur, didn't realize occurred.
We realized an accident occurred,
He
right?
realized something had happened. He didn't know exactly what. He was impaired. He knew he hit something. He had no idea what.
And knew enough to stop a couple hundred feet
He knew enough to
ahead.
stop, to see what was going on. Didn't see any activity. Didn't know what had happened.
For how long? I mean, I suppose the prosecutor knows the answer to this, but it was not a long stop, 100 or so feet ahead,
Correct.
right?
It was a quick. It was observed by, I believe, the individual that was in the car in front of him. He's not even sure. He just knows that he stopped and or slowed down, looked, didn't see anything going on. Didn't know whether he really hit anything until he got to the location. And when he and his friend looked at the vehicle, they noticed that there was damage to the vehicle on the one side. He fell asleep that night, as I indicated, woke up the next day. The situation for Brian was he was indicted on numerous counts. He was arrested that day. He's been incarcerated ever since that day. He's been a model prisoner at the Lake County Jail. He's had no issues. He was actually in a solitary for a while, I think for protection, I'm not sure right off the bat. But he was by himself for a period of time. Finally, he got into the general population. He is, I think the court knows from the letter that he submitted to the court, from what he indicated to the probation department, that he's extremely remorseful. Officer Mazzani, even though not known to him, is sort of like an extended member of his own family because he is so connected with law enforcement. In any event, it's my job, Your Honor, to discuss really Brian today, not so much Officer Mazzani. And as the court is aware, the legislature, and this court has to sentence Brian today, and the legislature has set certain guidelines and factors to assist the court in making a determination as to the type of sentence the court should give. And the legislature has set up various principles and purposes for sentencing. The overriding purpose of sentencing is to punish the offender and protect the public from future crime by the offender and others, using the minimum sanctions the court determines to accomplish the purpose without imposing an unnecessary burden on the state or local government resources. The principle is always consider the need for incapacitation, deterrence, rehabilitation, restitution. The sentence should be commensurate with and not demeaning to the seriousness of the
misconduct and its impact on the victim and consistent with sentences for similar crimes by similar offenders. The case began with this indictment, Your Honor, and the indictment, as the court is aware, the defendant entered a plea of guilty to the indictment as, I guess, amended by the state point, decided to agree with that Brian never knew he hit a person, never knew he hit a police officer. Count 4 of the indictment alleged that as a felony too. And that was something that we had discussed with the state for a period of time. Eventually the state agreed, based on information they had and conduct from Brian and other information that they gathered, that he did not know that he hit a police officer, that he did not know that he hit a person. So they dismissed that count. When that count was dismissed, Brian agreed to plead guilty and take responsibility for all the balance of the indictment. And Brian would have taken responsibility even sooner had that case been dismissed earlier by the state. It just took them a long time to realize that that count was not provable and was not a good count. The factors for this court to consider under 29-29-12 are created by the legislature. And the legislature has determined penalties for different offenses, and for the offenses that Brian pled guilty to, the legislature has set up sentencing factors and sentencing ranges. So they have indicated to the court by legislation to consider various factors. Aggravated vehicular homicide is a felony of the second degree, carries a mandatory penalty of 2 to 8 years. That means that the least penalty is 2 years, the most is 8 years. There's no opportunity for early release or judicial release on the mandatory penalty. Leaving the scene of an accident is a felony 3, it carries 9 to 36 months. And as the court is well aware, the legislature has determined these ranges based on the wisdom of the legislature. In achieving the purposes and principles of sentencing, the court is to determine these factors, and I wanted to go through those factors with the court. Under 29-29-12, which is the statute that governs the various factors, the sentencing court should consider all the following that apply regarding the offender.
Are you in subsection
29-12B?
B? Okay.
Correct. The sentencing court shall consider all the following that apply regarding the offender, the offense, or the victim, and any other relevant factors indicating that the offender's conduct is more serious than conduct normally constituting the offense. We don't believe that any of the factors under B apply here.
What about B2?
B2 says the victim of the offense suffered serious physical, psychological, and economic harm as a result of the offense. There's no doubt that Officer Mazzani suffered serious physical harm and died. However, every aggravated vehicular homicide has the same elements. Every aggravated vehicular homicide requires proof of an OVI, 45-11-19, proof of an impaired driver, and as an approximate result of that somebody dies. So under 29-29-12B, this is no different than any other aggravated vehicular homicide.
So has the legislator accepted out aggravated vehicular homicide under B2?
No.
But it automatically never applies. That's what you're saying, because the consequence or the result is death, right?
I'm saying, and I'm going to suggest some case law in this area.
Well, I've read your memorandum, but essentially you're saying that B2 never applies in an aggravated vehicular homicide case, right?
I'm saying it doesn't apply to make it more more serious or less serious.
Well, that's, I mean, B2 or subsection B are seriousness factors, factors that make it more serious. So I want to be clear that your position is no matter what, in an aggravated vehicular homicide case, B2 does not apply because the end consequence is death.
Correct.
Okay.
Under a number of cases that we cited in our memorandum, aggravated vehicular homicide offenses always involve death. The same serious physical harm factor applies in every case. So when the legislature tells you to look at factors, they're saying that in every single case, this factor is...
Not the legislature. The legislature never said that. They listed...
Case law.
Right. The legislature has never amended B2.
Correct.
Okay.
That the uniform application neutralizes the matter so as to make any one instance of aggravated vehicular homicide no more or less serious. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is that in every aggravated vehicular homicide, you have a death and you have an impaired driver.
And I understand the point. I understand the point you're trying to make, but as a result of that point, you believe B2 does apply in any aggravated vehicular homicide case.
I don't think it makes it more or less serious.
That's what I'm talking about. That's the point of B, is more or less serious, right? Or more serious.
That's my understanding of the law, Judge.
Okay, go ahead.
That's how it's been interpreted by other courts of appeals. So that...
What has the 11th District done with that? Do you know?
I don't know if they've dealt with that issue.
Okay.
So we believe that this is not distinguishable from any other aggravated vehicular homicide. There's nothing here. There's no indication that Mr. Mazzini was hit and dragged a period of time, or run over multiple times by an impaired driver. The facts in this case show that Officer Mazzini...
Is that a situation where the cases that you talk about have addressed that?
I'm looking
Situations
for
such as
more
that?
serious than death.
Well, okay. I mean, but you're talking about the manner of death, not the death. When you're talking about dragging and things of that nature, right?
I'm trying to think of something that myself that would have a worse form of death than, that would involve maybe torture along the way. Something else like that other than death itself. Because in every case it's the same. Same with the leaving the scene of an accident, Judge. In every case somebody is in an accident and they leave the scene of an accident.
Well, they leave in different manners, though, right? Some just keep on going and never stop. Some, an hour later, come back to where it happened and report it. That's still leaving the scene. Some stop a couple of 100 feet ahead and then keep on going. So there's different ways, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And however, in every case there's an accident, somebody leaves the scene. In some cases, somebody leaves the scene and they might have left somebody who was badly injured there that they're aware of, that leaving the scene could have aggravated the injuries to that person.
All right, so is B2 not applicable to leaving the scene offenses? Because in every case somebody leaves the scene?
In every case somebody leaves the scene.
Okay, but
the statute itself increases the penalty if somebody has died or seriously injured. In this case, it's an F3 because he left the scene when somebody died, but he didn't know that somebody died. It's automatically enhanced by the conduct.
All right.
In this case, every case where somebody leaves the scene of an accident, where somebody dies, is an F3.
I understand that.
There's nothing different.
Okay, but so the seriousness factor in B2 doesn't apply in this case, in this leaving the scene case? Is that what your position is?
That's what, Judge, it's built into the statute.
I just want to make sure that your position is B2 does not apply to the leaving the scene in this case. Okay.
And the reason is because it is in every single offense.
And that's not been accepted out by the legislature, correct?
Judge, as you know, every offense has a penalty.
I know.
they have a bottom and a top.
I know.
And the legislature has set up various factors for you to consider
I know.
deciding to give her a lower or greater penalty. Other courts of appeals have held, at least for the aggravated homicide, that the same thing happens in every case, so it's not a real factor.
I understand that's your position.
With relation to 2912C, the offender's conduct is less serious. Brian did not cause or expect to cause physical harm to persons or property. It was nothing that he intended to do. And we feel that there are some grounds to mitigate, and those grounds to mitigate are based on the fact that the light situation, based on the expert report that we provided, based on some of the articles I provided to you, indicate that the intense lights of these light bars have, what is known as a moth effect that causes people to actually look at it or drawn to it. It washes out what you see. It affects the depth perception. In this case, Officer Mazzani was standing next to the vehicle, wearing dark clothing, and I only submit that to show that, and the state has accepted the fact that we didn't know we hit Officer Mazzani when they dismissed that count. So they've already accepted that fact, but I point that out, and I'm not excusing the fact that he was impaired, but...
Well, does your expert contend that the moth effect only applies to everybody across the board, or only to people who are impaired?
Both.
Well, then there were, I believe, 65 cars that passed that scene that night when the lights were on. 64 passed successfully.
Judge, you might take 1,000 people, it might affect 2 of them, I don't know.
Okay.
But those are studies, and I gave you articles that show...
I read them.
Police departments are getting rid of some of those light bars because they're so intense, they wash out. And since this incident, I have myself, every time I see cruisers pulled over with those flashing light bars, the very intense ones, the blue and red ones, I've looked to see myself if they affect.
All right.
Maybe we've done the same, I don't know. But in any event,
let me ask you...
I'm not offering it as an excuse because he was impaired, and when you're impaired, it makes things worse.
Let me ask you about C3. You say the offender did not cause or expect to cause harm to person or property, right?
Correct.
Does that mean, it says, part of that is offender did not cause harm to person or property, right? The second part of it is offender did not expect to cause harm to person or property, right? They're either or.
We don't deny that he caused harm.
Okay, so how does that factor apply for less serious, if he did cause harm?
He did, we're only indicating he didn't expect to.
Okay, but the other part of it is he did, right?
He did cause, and that's built into those statutes as a factor that was already accepted for vehicular homicide and for leaving the scene of an accident when somebody is killed. So,
Okay, but you contend that C3 does not apply because of, you jump back up to B2, and the result of an aggravated vehicular homicide is death.
I'm saying part of C3, that I'm just saying he never intended or expected to cause physical harm to anybody. Under 2912D, the factors there I do not believe apply. Under 4, where it says the offender has demonstrated a pattern of drug or alcohol abuse that is related to the offense, and the offender refuses to acknowledge that the offender has demonstrated that pattern. I think it's pretty clear that he's acknowledged that. He's telling the court that he had a problem with drugs and alcohol, and he acknowledged it and has indicated to the court that he accepts that and will do whatever is necessary to overcome that. With the number 5, it says the offender shows no genuine remorse.
Does D4, what about the fact that your statement was a number of months in advance of June 24 he started drinking again? Does that impact D4 at all?
I think the fact that the statute says and the offender refuses to acknowledge that he has demonstrated that pattern, clearly acknowledges that to the court.
Okay. So does the acknowledgement require any action for that to be applicable?
I think the action will be his acknowledgement of what he intends to do in the future.
Okay.
Some people don't acknowledge anything. Number 5, the offender
What about
shows no genuine-
what about D2? History of criminal convictions and adjudications.
Judge, he has a couple of misdemeanors on his record that are really not driving or OVI-related offenses, so they're not offenses that are related to impaired driving.
Does D2 require them to be related to the nature of what we're here for now?
No, but I think this court can tell the fact that he doesn't have a series of felonies, he doesn't have any significant misdemeanors, and how old these offenses are, that they don't rise to the level that I think the legislature intended for this court to consider.
Well, that's your belief, it's not something ingrained in the statutes by the
It's
legislature.
nothing
Right?
ingrained, Judge, but you deal with individuals that have histories of repeated serious criminal offenses. I think that's what's contemplated here.
Well, and each of them are dealt with individually based on the facts and circumstances of the case, right?
And we're asking you to do the same here, I'm sure.
I do the same every time.
Right. The offender shows no genuine remorse. I think it's clearly he has tremendous remorse. In fact, his mother spoke to the court, and I wanted to read something that I got in a letter from her and that was submitted to you as she visited Brian in jail. She says, as the months progressed, I watched Brian move through various phases of shock, grieving, sadness, shame, abandonment, and overall brokenness. At one point, he pushed us away and said he needed to deal with this alone. He didn't want to bring his family down with him. He was very remorseful and ashamed of failing to make the right decisions that night. My visits with him include me asking him to look at me and say the words, "It was an accident." The remorse in his eyes is evident. Brian is not an overly emotional person. In fact, he always tries to show the exterior, but I know him well. Inside, he is broken. Broken for the pain his actions caused, and broken because he failed at the one thing he had worked so hard at, and that was staying in recovery. I only point that out, Judge, to show that how desperately remorseful Brian has been over this thing, which is consistent with his overall personality and what many of the people have said about him. Under 292912E, the sentencing court should consider all the following. In that, he did lead a law-abiding life for a significant number of years as a child, and when he was in sobriety for 5 years. The offense was committed under circumstances not likely to recur.
Now, how can we ever tell that?
We can't, the legislature has that in there, but we never can guess what people are going to do.
Okay, but let's take the guesswork out of it. And in 13, he got treatment, right? And by all accounts that I'm aware of, both with testimonials from his family and the lack of a record, that he must have kept sober, correct?
Correct.
Okay. At some point in the spring, he starts to drink. Then he starts to use cocaine, right?
Correct.
So did anybody see back in 13 after he got done with treatment, or in 14 or in 15, 16 and 17, that it was likely that he was going to go back to what he had done in 12 and 13?
No, Judge, but I think the impact of this event has such an impact on him that I think it's predictable it's not going to happen again.
Well, then you're a better predictor than I am.
He has the support of numerous people that are here to support him.
And he's
eventually gets out of prison.
And he's had that support. He had that support for 5 years.
And he deviated short period of time that he went off sobriety. And it could happen again. I'm not saying it can't, but I think this event has been so, this is something he never considered would happen.
Nobody sitting in his place ever considers that this is going to happen. Nobody.
But it is something that he has to live with, something that he has found to overcome, something that he wants to give back to the community, and something that he wants to prove to his family and himself that nothing like this will ever happen again. We've indicated why the factors don't make either this conduct or the leaving the scene any more serious than other ones. The another aggravated vehicular leaving the scene offenses because the conduct is built into the statute. We believe, based on the report from the probation department and the psych department says that Brian has a substance abuse problem. And that's the only issue that they found with Brian. The probation department found that he was a low risk for criminal conduct based on his criminal history. He was at the lowest risk. The probation department found that he was a low risk because he had family support. They found that he was at a moderate risk because of his neighborhood, which I don't understand because he lives in Kirtland, Ohio, which I think the court knows is a neighborhood that it is not a low-risk neighborhood, so we question why they put that in there. They said his peer association made it a moderate risk. At this point, his peer association is really his family, and I don't know what peer association they're referring to at that point because they don't outline it. So he's a low to moderate risk at best. The substance abuse is the only category that they put him at a high risk. So Judge, we believe, based on all these things, that if you look at the factors, if you look at his overall history, you look at the support he's got, and you look at how psych and probation evaluated him, that he is a low risk for committing future crimes, and that he is at he's in a position where he should not receive maximum sentence.
Well, that's one of the overriding purposes, right?
Correct.
It's not both of the. It's not. You're excluding the other factor. The overriding purposes.
You know what the overriding purposes are: to protect the public and punish him.
Right.
Okay? In the least effective way possible. He also entered a plea of guilty. He gave up his right to appeal some of the issues that were raised in this case, many of which would have never been raised had the state removed that count in the beginning. So,
well, they removed the count.
yeah,
I mean, let's be clear. They removed the count because they didn't think that they could prove that count beyond a reasonable doubt based on whatever they reviewed, and it was their obligation, and they fulfilled their obligation to dismiss that. Right?
They felt they were acting in good faith, which means they accepted that Brian did not know he hit a person or a police officer.
And that's what they have to do, right? They can't. They don't prosecute counts that they don't believe exist.
Well, they charge that count.
I know they charge the count.
So they charged it, and it took us all that time to get that done. And as soon as it was done, we entered a plea. And that something would have been done much earlier had that count been removed earlier. In any event, he pled guilty to the indictment that remained, accepted full responsibility, avoided a costly trial, avoided more trauma for the Zaney family. So he accepted full responsibility. In our memorandum, we indicate how other courts, such as the federal court, does give a benefit for that. And we think that he should receive some benefit and consideration from the court that he did that.
All right. I'm certainly not bound by federal sentencing guidelines.
We just think that we would offer that as a means that he should get some credit for that.
I guess the converse to that is if he didn't plead and he went to trial and was found guilty, does that automatically mean he should be punished more because he went to trial?
Not necessarily, Your Honor.
Okay.
But I think the fact that he accepted responsibility and entered a plea of guilty and saved the state and his own family trauma and expense shows tremendous remorse on his part, and I think he should get some benefit for that, and that is up to the court to determine the benefit he should receive. As far as consecutive treatment in this case, the OBI itself, which carries 6 months in jail, and which he pled guilty to, is not automatically consecutive. It's only consecutive if this court determines to make it consecutive. OBI is the predicate part or predicate conduct that is necessary for aggravated vehicular homicide. There's no doubt that he was impaired. It is part of the statute. We believe that it should not be consecutive, and I'll get into that a little bit more. As far as leaving the scene of the accident, leaving the scene of the accident did not cause any greater harm to Officer Mazzani. In some cases it could. It all happened while Brian was impaired. We believe that under 2929.41 that all these offenses are presumed to be concurrent unless the court makes certain findings under 2929.14C4. And the court would have to find that the harm is so great or unusual that a single term doesn't adequately reflect the seriousness of the conduct. In this case, the harm caused in both the aggravated vehicular homicide and in the leaving the scene of an accident are built into the statute. So we don't believe they create or cause or allow this court to consider that the harm is so great or unusual that consecutive sentences would apply here. Brian was not awaiting trial on any other sanction or post-release control. There's nothing to indicate that his criminal history is so bad that consecutive sentences are needed to protect the public from him. There's no prior OBI offense, no prior violent offense, no prior offense involving vehicle injury to others. So, Judge, in light of all this, and with deference to the Mazzani family and deference to the Mentor Police, and in my effort to point out the factors to the court, we believe the factors provide a basis for a low sentence, a non-consecutive sentence. We would ask the court to sentence, and we also know that any sentence he gets on the aggravated vehicular is a sentence that he has to serve. Sometimes this court has the benefit of looking to see how people change in prison, what they do, and has the opportunity to offer short probation, maybe after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever. And the court has that opportunity. There is no opportunity for that in this case. I expect that Brian will serve his sentence whatever the court gives him and be the best person he can be. I think he'll work hard at trying to be a person who's trying to give back to the prison community, to the community he's from, try to mentor and teach others like he has in the past. Brian is a very good person who unfortunately did a bad thing that I don't expect people to ever do again. Your Honor, we would ask you to consider a non-consecutive, concurrent, low sentence for Brian. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else to present? Mr. Perez?
No, Your Honor.
Mrs. Zuri?
Your Honor, I would ask that the court give Officer Mazzani's family the opportunity to speak.
All right, whoever is going to speak, if you would just state your name and tell me whatever it is you want me to know.
I am Michael John Mazzani. My brother was Matthew James Mazzani. My brother had many nicknames growing up. I'd like to read them off all out here if I could, please. He was Matty. He was my Futu. He was my feet. He was Fat Matt, Matt the cat. And finally, Officer Matt. I would like to apologize to every officer that had to sit here and hear this from these people this morning. As a policeman's son, I made my peace with my father not coming home when I was 5 years old. The year was 1975. My daddy was on SWAT. I am also an alcoholic with 15 years of consecutive sobriety. Had you pulled over, sir, had you picked up that phone that you so desperately hid from justice, and you, sir, do you have your own ambulance? How dare you? How dare you stand in here and wave the flag of law enforcement, wave the flag of grace and peace when you fought so hard to keep this little bastard out of jail?
Mr. Mazzani, I'm going to ask you to lower your voice and to refrain from using names such as that.
I apologize, Your Honor. I don't mean to disrespect this court, my brother's memory, or law enforcement in general. I apologize, but ever since this young man's first hearing, I have watched smug face, I have watched this family, I have watched it all, and I have said, where's the remorse? Where is it? And you, sir, well, we're glad the state of Ohio finally saw it our way. How dare you? This family has fought so hard to deny this man time that I feel that the only justice would be to send him to the worst place possible. I don't care if he finds Jesus al the Buddha while he's locked up. I don't care any of it. I'm insulted by it. This man nailed my brother. My brother is 1.5 the size of me. It had to be like hitting a small deer. You ground him down and flung him through the air. You didn't know. You're a liar. It is insulting for me to hear that we're praying for both families, because my family didn't do anything. My family hasn't fought to deny justice. My family did. You've had more opportunities than me and my brother ever had. Me and my brother fought for everything we had. My brother went to the shittiest public school in Cleveland. He got bused. My brother rose above it. My brother became an officer. My brother answered the call of service and integrity and duty like his father before him. As a policeman's son and as a policeman's brother, it is absolutely disgusting to hear these live courtesy card things being waved around. We all know the rules. This blue family. This is disgusting 11.5 years you're looking at. It's disgusting. You won't even be in jail the same amount of time my brother was a policeman. My father had 14 years when Chief Knight started. My father was doing 15 drug houses a month in the 80s on SWAT. My brother prepared for a physical fight like his father before him. You hit him with the car and you ran. You knew you hit him. Don't tell me, yo, the lights. The lights. So blinding, so drawing, the lights. Come on, how can you sit there and say that? Every man in this room sees blue lights. Nobody goes careening into them. Green tea shots. My brother drank 100 proof whiskey from the bottle, like a man. My brother stood for things like a man. You, sir, have showed no integrity, no remorse. Had you pulled over, had you said, hey, I think I just did something terrible, the alcoholic in me would have compassion for you and say, but there by the grace of God go I. But I have no compassion for you, I have no sympathy for you, and I will be there every time you try to get an extra piece of toast or whatever break you're looking for in the months to come. How dare you? And I certainly hope whatever courtesies this gentleman was getting on the streets ceases. I demand the maximum sentence, Your Honor. My brother was a good man. He helped many people. He helped society first and foremost in his thoughts as he made arrests, as he wrote tickets, as he did as a police officer. He would ask himself, do my actions help or hurt society? An example needs to be set to these young people that choose to do this. I'm just aghast standing here and listening to this. No remorse. I don't feel any remorse. I don't feel any sorrow. Thank you, Your Honor, and I do apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Mazzani.
My son would like to speak.
Okay.
Hi, Matthew Joseph Mazzani, son of Officer Mazzani. To you, Brian, I forgive you. For I cannot hold hate in my heart, because I know it will tear me apart inside and make me something that I am not. It would make me human, make me a vile creature. We all make mistakes. We're all human. You made a mistake. I've admitted that you will do your part. And that much, I think, because I know there are many people in my life who never admitted their fault. But that's I don't really know what to say. But to your family, I'm sorry. I don't understand how what they're going through, but I kind of do. Stuff and I wish I know one. But know that I forgive you. This hate is not for me. You should go. Thank you.
Thank you.
My son is a good man. My name is Lisa Mazzani. That was my husband. I've heard a lot of things here about forgiveness, about responsibility, and second chances. Matt's not going to get a second chance. My son doesn't get his father back. I don't get my husband back. Brian still has his life. You still have your son. I don't have that. My son doesn't have that anymore. He does have a second chance. We don't. In regards to responsibility, I did want to say a few things about the life of Matt. We've been together for a long time, over 22 years. Matt was my best friend. He was my soulmate. He was my husband for 22 years. That's almost as old as you are today. A piece of me is gone forever. I'll never be the same. Our son's life will never be the same. I've thought a long time about what I wanted to say. You already know that every life that has been touched by this tragedy has been destroyed. So instead, I'll tell you a little bit about the man that he was. He was a good man with a heart of gold. He was a responsible, loving man that overcame obstacles in life and he gave to others. When Matt was 16, he got his first job to help his mom pay bills. When his mom's car died, Matt gave her his car, paid for her car insurance, and took the bus to work and school because he didn't want his mom to take the bus to work. He wanted to keep her safe. The first car that he ever bought for himself was a stick shift that cost $500 because that was all he could afford. I mentioned that it was a stick shift because he didn't know how to drive a stick. Matt taught himself how to drive that car on the way home from the lot. When he was 22, our son was born. At that tender young age, he took on the role of a father and husband. He worked hard his whole life to provide for his family. Before he died, he bought a Harley and rode it all the way to California to see his brother and back to Ohio, alone for most of his trip. He was a novice rider and he just got his motorcycle license. But that didn't stop him. He wanted to live life to the fullest. He never let fear stop him from living his dreams. It was an epic trip of a lifetime. Epic, just like he was. Matt didn't choose a career in law enforcement because he wanted to earn a paycheck. He wanted to help people. He was not your typical cop, as many here in this courtroom can attest to. He did things his own way and by God's own moral code. He never sweat the small stuff, so if you got a ticket from Matt, you damn well deserved it. He was old school, and that's what they called him, old school. After he died, I received the contents of his locker. Amongst pictures of us, there was a picture in there that I forgot about a long time ago. He had this picture in his locker for 13 years. It was a picture of a mural I painted for Ryan. It was a painting of Lucifer. When he asked me for the picture, I was shocked and I asked him why he would want something so ugly in his locker. He said, it reminds him of who he fights against every day when he goes to work. And that was the mindset and the heart of this beautiful, fearless man when he laced up his boots, put that gun on his hip, and walked out the door and into the world. Matt had incredible strength of character. He was fierce and determined in everything that he did. He was my protector, my son's protector. With Matt by my side, I always felt safe. He was my heart and my soul. He inspired me in ways that I wish I could tell him now. Whenever I'm in a tough spot, I find myself asking what he would do in this situation. And I still lean on his strength and his love. He was my everything. He was my hero. Not because he wore a badge, but because he was and is the epitome of what a good man is. So you see, you didn't kill a police officer. You took the life of a very special man. His name was Matthew James Mazzani, and he was a light in this world. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Zuri?
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, at this time, I would ask that the state's statements from the changes of plea hearing by Mr. Shapiro be incorporated into this hearing, specifically the statement of facts. So we'll put on the record that.
All right.
Your Honor, on December 15th of 2003, Officer Mazzani was sworn in as a patrol officer with the Mentor Police Department. On that date, he took an oath committing to protect the community he served. He wore badge 72. On June 24th, his life was tragically cut short by the irresponsible actions of the defendant. Officer Mazzani's death was completely preventable, but we're here today because of the multitude of poor choices of the defendant on June 23rd and June 24th of 2018. First, he chose to drink continuously from approximately 8 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. on June 23rd of 2018. Officer Mazzani's death, frame by frame, over and over, find the license plate of the vehicle that killed him because the defendant left the scene. They had to repeatedly watch the moment of Officer Mazzani's death. The entire Mentor Police Department has been affected by this, and despite that, they conducted a commendable investigation into the death of their own. They did everything right and left no stone unturned. It was argued that the defendant did not expect to cause physical harm to persons or property. Your Honor, any person that gets behind the wheel under the influence of alcohol or drugs, or a combination of them especially, should count their lucky stars that they get home without hurting somebody. He put countless number of people in danger on June 24th. After being intoxicated to the point of requiring an Uber, he got into his car in Lakeline and drove 15 minutes to get cash. He then gets back in his car and drives approximately another 10 minutes to get the drugs. And then, after the drug deal, he gets back into his car onto Route 90, onto Route 2, into Lake County, striking and killing Officer Mazzani. He gets off at Route 615 and drives further to the Mentor Lagoons. He arrives there at around 1:20 a.m. Approximately an hour and 20 minutes between the time he got into his car in Lakeline and ends at the Mentor Lagoons. That's an hour and 20 minutes of driving approximately, where he was putting every person on the road in danger. To the factors that recidivism is more likely, he does have a history of criminal convictions and juvenile adjudications, and the state's opinion is that you should consider those. In 2011, he has multiple petty theft charges as a juvenile, but he also has possession of alcohol charge that is relevant to this offense. In 2012, he has another underage possession charge. 2013, criminal trespass. He does have a history of drug and alcohol abuse that is clear from the pre-sentence report. This began at the age of 15. He was in 3 separate residential treatment facilities between the years of 2013 and 2016. He was reportedly clean until April of 2018, at which time he began using cocaine on a weekly basis on the weekends. At no point in April or May or June did the defendant seek treatment for his addiction, which he was very familiar with since he was in treatment for approximately 3 years prior to that. He knew the steps and he knew what he needed to do, and he refused to do it. Your Honor, consecutive sentences in this case are necessary to protect the public and to punish the defendant. They are not disproportionate, and the harm is so great or unusual that a single term does not adequately reflect the seriousness of his conduct. He drove under the influence for approximately an hour and 20 minutes that night, during which time he struck and killed Officer Mazzani. He then made the choice to leave the scene knowing that he was involved in a crash, and the legislature has carved out separate consequences for individuals that leave the scene of a crime, of a crash. Therefore, his conduct, that charge should run consecutive to his aggravated vehicular homicide charge. And for all of the reasons that I've discussed, it is the state's contention that this is the worst form of these offenses. So the state is asking for 8 years, which is a mandatory term on count 1, aggravated vehicular homicide, 36 months on count 4, stalking after an accident, to run consecutive to count 1, and 180 days in jail on count 2, the OVI, to run consecutive. To date, he has 293 days of credit.
All right, and the statement given by, the factual statement given by Mr. DePiro at the change of plea are incorporated into your presentation. Anything else, Mrs. Uri?
No, thank you.
All right. All right, I have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation and report, the drug and alcohol evaluation. Also reviewed the numerous letters that were provided to me in support of the defendant. Reviewed the victim impact statements that were presented to me. I have considered all of those things, and I've considered the statements in support of the defendant made here today, the statements, the victim impact statements made on behalf of the state of Ohio or on behalf of Officer Mazzani here today. I've considered the sentencing memorandum and the addendum to that memorandum of defense counsel. I've considered the statements of counsel here today, and I've considered the statement of Mr. Anthony. And I've also considered the overriding purposes and principles of felony sentencing set forth in 2911, the overriding purposes of which are to punish the offender and to protect the public from future crime by the offender and others, using the minimum sanction the court determines accomplish the purposes without imposing an unnecessary burden on state or local government resources. I've considered the principles under that same section, considering the need for incapacitation, deterrence, rehabilitation, and restitution. Consider the fact that the sentence should be commensurate with and not demeaning to the seriousness of the defendant's conduct and the impact upon the victim, and that it must be consistent with crimes by similar offenders. And I've not given any consideration to the defendant's race, ethnicity, gender, or religion. I've considered the seriousness and recidivism factors in 292912B through E. And under B2, I find that the victim, Officer Mazzani, suffered serious physical harm that resulted in his death. And I will say that in reviewing one of the exhibits the state submitted under seal, that being the dash cam from Officer Chalupka's car, that it seemed as though, from reviewing that there was an effort to revive Officer Mazzani by Officer Chalupka and Officer Govedich and others. But nonetheless, he suffered death as a result of this action by the defendant. Mrs. Zuri mentioned that Officer Chalupka suffered some psychological harm, and I don't know how you could say anything but serious psychological harm, even though I don't have a psychological report, because I witnessed that video. She witnessed it in person. And Officer Govedich was the next one to come on the scene. And several officers thereafter came and witnessed what had just occurred. So clearly, 292912B2E or B2 is applicable in this situation.
We have a quick sidebar for a minute.
Under subsection B9, other relevant factors, there were a multitude of Mentor police officers who both witnessed what happened, one of them live, many more by video in the attempt to figure out what evidence they could garner from the dash cam. So B9 is also applicable. Under factors that indicate less seriousness, I don't find any that are applicable. That's in subsection C. Subsection D, factors indicating recidivism is more likely. There is a history of adjudications and criminal convictions. They are not, the determination or the consideration of these factors is not relegated to similar crimes. There is a juvenile adjudication of 2 counts of attempted petty theft, 5 counts of petty theft, criminal damaging and endangering. There's a adjudication for possession of alcohol. There's a conviction in 2012 for underage consumption or possession of alcohol, and in 2013, conviction for criminal trespass. Under factors that indicate recidivism is less likely, I find applicable E4, or I do not find E4 applicable as discussed by Mr. Perez, because I think taking the predictability out of the equation, which should be taken out of the equation, all by itself, you can't predict what's going to happen in the future, but you can tell what may occur based on what happened in the past. And what happened in the past is there was a serious drug and alcohol program or problem. There was treatment. There was a period of sobriety. And then the sobriety ended sometime, as near as I can tell, in or around April of 2018, and it continued, and it got ramped up to the extent that cocaine became involved on a weekly basis, and as a result, here we are today. So there are no factors that I find applicable under subsection E. There's been a number of statements made here today in support of Mr. Anthony, and by counsel also, that Mr. Anthony deserves a second chance. And it was noted by some of the other individuals who talked that Mr. Anthony will get a second chance. And in reviewing the letters in support of Mr. Anthony and in listening to Chief Fox today, it's apparent that the supporters, or at least a number of them, mostly the family members, believe that they have failed Brian Anthony somewhere along the line. And nothing could be further from the truth. They've done everything they can for you, and you have failed them. I mean, you failed them to the point where Chief Fox carries around some guilt because he had a beer at a family function when you were in your teens. And I can't relieve him of that guilt. He has it, but objectively, he surely shouldn't have it. So you've had an outstanding support system for a long time that brought you 4+ years of sobriety, maybe 5. And that support system was still there. And you went back to where you were back in 2012, 2013. So your family bears no responsibility for the situation you're in right now. And I'm not sure that you're of that belief. I don't get that from you. Maybe you believe that. I don't get it from you at this point. Mr. Mike Mazzani revealed that he's an alcoholic with 15 years of sobriety. And one of the things he said is, you know the rules. And you knew the rules. You knew the rules to the extent that when that night began, you were going out with a bunch of people and you knew you were going to drink, right? You knew that was part of the equation. And you made the arrangements to get an Uber, correct? Because you knew that you were going to begin on a path that was going to leave you unable to drive, or at the very least know that you shouldn't be driving if you were going to start drinking.
Yes, Your Honor.
So you had the foresight, after probably 3 months or so of getting back into the drugs and alcohol, to know you were going to be in that position the night of the 23rd, the morning of the 24th. So at some point, you end up in downtown Willoughby sitting on a bench in front of one of the bars, and what I see from the pre-sentence report is somebody unknown to you, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, comes up to you and talks about where you can get presumably cocaine. And you get that direction, right?
Yes.
I mean, where did he tell you to go?
He just gave me a phone number.
Okay, so you called somebody, right? And that somebody told you where to go?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And that was in Euclid or was it in Cleveland?
I honestly don't know Euclid.
Okay, so but how did you get there? You drove there, but how did you find out where you were going?
GPS.
Okay, so you knew enough and you were conscious enough to plug in the GPS into your phone, go to the ATM, functionally use the ATM, get the money, get back in your car, and go get it, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you knew enough to give them the money and get the drugs.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So you had some semblance of thought going through your mind as what you were going to do and how you had to accomplish what you were going to do, right?
Yes. Yes.
All right. And then you took the drugs, and then here we are. So there were a series of instances and circumstances that started once you began to drink again in the spring, and they continued to ramp up, and you knew what you were getting into. You knew after you started drinking early on that you were back into where you were in 2012 and 2013, right?
No, Your Honor.
You didn't. You thought you could drink and you would be okay.
Well, I guess you could say I wasn't really thinking. I don't know how to explain it other than that.
All right, so nevertheless, you start out on the 23rd sober, and from the standpoint that you hadn't begun drinking on the 23rd, and
Yes.
you embarked on a series of decisions that ended in this tragedy. And it's a tragedy to everybody in this room. It's a tragedy, certainly, to Matt Mazzini's family, to the police department, to your stepfather who had to go onto the scene. It's a tragedy to your family because once again, through not one iota of fault attributable to them, you put them in this position where they're suffering. So we've been together in court a number of months, and your mother's reaction is the same every time she's here. So there's a tragedy all the way around. But whatever sentence I give you, there's one thing that's certain: you're going to be out at some point at a relatively young age, or a young age, and certainly younger than Matt Mazzani was when he died. So, after consideration of everything that I've just talked about, it's the sentence of the court on count 1 that you serve a term of 8 years, Lorraine Correctional. That's the aggravated vehicular homicide. That's a mandatory term. On count 2, the OVI, 180 days. And count 4, stopping after accident, at a term of 36 months. And those sentences shall be consecutive to one another. And I find that consecutive service is necessary both to punish you and that the consecutive sentence is not disproportionate to the seriousness of your conduct and the danger that you pose to the public. I further find that your history of criminal conduct demonstrates that a consecutive sentence is necessary to protect the public from future crime by you. You're given credit for 293 days, and the costs are... Mrs. Zuri, is there anything relative to the sentence itself?
Your Honor, the mandatory post-release control and driver's license as well.
Right. And it's a 3-year mandatory, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. When you get out, you are going to be on post-release control for a period of 3 years under the direction of the Adult Parole Authority. If you violate any of the conditions of your post-release control, then the Adult Parole Authority could return you to prison for up to 9 months for each of your violations, up to 1/2 the time that I have given you in this case. If that violation is a new felony, then whatever court you're in, you can receive an additional consecutive prison sentence for the post-release control violation. And that sentence would be the greater of 12 months or the time you have left under the 3 years of post-release control. Your operator's license is revoked for your lifetime. Is there anything else, Mrs. Zuri?
Your Honor, I might have missed this. The mandatory fine on count 2,
Is 1,000...
it's $375 to $1,075, and then do you take a position as to shock incarceration?
All right, the mandatory fine of $375 is imposed on the OVI, and I do not take a position. Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Anything further, Mr. Perez?
No, Your Honor.
We're adjourned.
All right.